Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast, Path to Pupillage at the Criminal Bar mini-series, brought to you in collaboration with Red Lion Chambers. I'm your host, Rob Hanna, and I'm excited to guide you through this exclusive series focused on pupillage and entry to the bar. Over the next 8 minisodes, we'll feature insightful conversations with 8 distinguished members of the legal community. As we approach the 2025 pupillage round, we'll delve into all the essential advice for prospective pupils, from preparing for interviews to handling rejections and uncovering top qualities necessary for success in chambers. This series is designed to provide you invaluable guidance and first-hand experiences to help you navigate your journey to the criminal bar. So tune in, take notes, and join us on this path to pupillage. Let's get started. To begin with, would you mind introducing yourself, your name, title, and organisation?
Of course. My name's Genevieve Reed. I'm a barrister at Red Lion Chambers in London.
And it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. So let's jump straight into it. What is the most important piece of advice you can give to a prospective pupil preparing for an interview?
I'm not sure there's one piece of advice that's necessarily better than others for pupillage interviews, but one that I always had in mind, especially when I was interviewing those years ago, was to have my 3 golden points. So I'd always have whatever interview I was going into, and of course it's dependent on the questions that you are asked, but I always had 3 points in mind that I'd always say to myself, I'm not going to leave that interview before I've said my 3 golden points, and just to think to yourself in preparation, obviously with all of the usual things that people will be preparing for. What are the 3 best things I have to offer this chambers? And it might be top of the class on a particular course, that you've won a particular moot. It may be a particular job role that you think is particularly interesting, whatever it might be, but it focuses your mind, has the added benefit as well that you're effectively giving the panel your top points when not every member of that panel may have read your form inside out. And that's not laziness, it's because your application really is a passport into your interview. And I think sometimes people forget that and think, oh, well, I've said everything I want to say in my application form, so now I've got to say something new. It's your passport into that interview, and what you say in your interview and how you perform in your interview is your passport to pupillage. So don't assume your application is going to continue doing the talking for you. If you have those brilliant points, and that's why those 3 golden points are important, that you really want that panel to know about, have them ready to go, and in the context of competencies, which of course pupillage interviews being much more formal these days and focused on competencies. Our chambers publishes all of our marking criteria and competencies on the websites, and I know other chambers do as well. So it's just really important, have those golden points in mind, focus on them in a competency based situation, think about how those skills are evidencing those competencies that they've set out. But I always think just a good rule of thumb is those 3 golden points that you want to get out, and just ensure that when you leave that interview, you're not kicking yourself thinking, oh, I wish I'd mentioned X, Y, and Z. So I think that's probably an important piece of advice, I would think, for preparing for interviews.
Yeah, and an incredible piece of advice. And I love how you phrase that in terms of your passport when it comes to the sort of application. And I might circle back at the end to ask a quick tip for that as well. But you're right, aren't you, in terms of, being prepared. And I love that you kind of had that structure going into interviews. Look, it's not always going to go to plan, as we all know. So what advice would you give to a pupil who maybe gets through to an interview stage but gets a rejection?
I can imagine and hear it, the groan already of what I'm about to say, because I would have been groaning as well if I was still applying for pupillage. But I think really it is, don't give up. I am the queen of pupillage rejection. It took me longer than a lot of my friends and peers at the time to get pupillage. So I know how disheartening it can be, and frankly depressing, when you put so much time and effort into your applications and you go through the stress and anxiety and sometimes what feels like trauma of going through your pupillage interviews, and that you've only got this one window in a year, which of course makes it worse because it's not as though you can keep putting applications in throughout the course of the year. So it really does put the extra pressure on. But if you are getting through to interviews, then you are doing all the right things. And I'm sorry to say that we just get so many fantastic applicants that there is an element of luck in reality. And people who are getting through to interviews, you're not doing the wrong things, you are doing all the right things. But just in terms of some advice, I think give yourself a break after pupillage sort of application season is over. It's taxing to go through it, do something else, have a break, give your mind a break from the grind of it. Then when you're ready to look at that pupillage application form that you probably don't want to ever look at again, look at it, go back, ask for feedback, sit and think about your application if you weren't getting interviews, and get everybody you know to review it. Get some constructive feedback. If your application is getting you through to interviews, then again, use that opportunity to sit down, have a think, really reflect on what's happened, ask for feedback from everywhere that you have applied, and by and large they're happy to give that feedback, reflect on it, and then think about doing some mock interviews. I know that there's nothing worse than having to go into those pupillage interviews, so a lot of people may not relish the idea of doing a mock interview, but I know that made such a massive difference for me. And actually the year that I did some mock interviews after years of rejection was the year that I got it, because even though you may be saying and doing all the right things, you not necessarily that aware, unless you're filming it, of how you're coming across and tone of voice and all of those sorts of things. So I think really it's giving yourself that break, reflecting on where you think the issue might be, and then getting some proper constructive help, whether it's by looking at the application forms or getting somebody to interview you. As many people you can get to do it as possible, and getting constructive feedback from them is just invaluable.
So many great pieces of advice there. And I always say there's real power in the pause. Like you said, go away, forget about it, actually have that pause. And then, like you say, you can reset, recharge, and then come back once you've taken that feedback. You know, you've actually gone to, you know, what I call the 3 Ps: preparation, preparation, preparation. Do those mock interviews, keep taking feedback. And then when you go into that room, you've given yourself absolutely every best chance to then come out on top next time around. So thank you so much for sharing that. Sticking with threes, what are your top 3 qualities you believe are essential for a pupil to succeed upon joining a Chambers?
Great question. Obviously, putting aside the sort of, you know, you've proven yourself on academics and focusing on advocacy skills and all of those sorts of things, looking at actually how to get on in Chambers, I think my top 3, number 1 would be is sort of hard work, basically, and demonstrating your capacity for hard work. The reality is this is not a 9-to-5 job, and of course well-being is important, but the reality of the job is it's long hours, there's a lot of travel, especially at the criminal bar, sort of going places last minute, getting instructions the night before, all of those sorts of things. So it's demonstrating to Chambers, particularly in your first 6 months when you're not practising, is just showing Chambers that you do have that capacity for hard work and sustained work. Number 2, enthusiasm, which sounds very cheesy, but I think in these post-COVID times, and certainly at the criminal bar, even prior to COVID, people were coming into Chambers less and less, and that was made worse, of course, by the pandemic. It's being able to still show your enthusiasm and thinking of ways and being able to do that when you're maybe not seeing members of Chambers every single day. And so maybe just thinking about turning up to every event that Chambers has, getting involved in any sort of extracurricular things that Chambers are doing, pro bono work, offering to do talks. And our pupils at the moment, for example, have offered to do these law updates, which are really popular, and it's just a way for people to come in and for them to meet people and to show their enthusiasm, which obviously goes down really well with other members of Chambers. And I think thirdly is being organised and being able to show your ability to manage your time, being able to prioritise, organise work, get things done on time, because of course, yes, capacity for hard work and enthusiasm and saying you're going to do all of those things is great, but you've then actually got to be able to show that you are able to manage your time properly, that you are able to take on all of those things that you've agreed to do and complete them in a timely way. So I think just in terms of thinking about actually getting on in chambers and demonstrating those important skills for when you're coming around to apply for tenancy. So capacity for hard work, enthusiasm, organisation.
Love that. Really practical, tactical, and some really good case studies and examples in there. And thank you so much, Genevieve. It's an absolute pleasure listening to all of that. If our listeners want to learn more about your career or Redline Chambers, where can they go to find out more? Feel free to shout out any social media handles, any website links. We'll also share them with this episode too.
Sure. So, our Chambers website and the Pupillage section on the website is actually almost too much information is on there, but you'll find absolutely everything you need to know about sorts of things we look for, structure of pupillage, all of things that are sort of included in the package that we offer, as well as setting out, because we want to be as transparent as possible, showing our marking criteria for applications and for interviews. And also our Twitter handle, LinkedIn, all of those sorts of things, all Redline Chambers, you'll find them just using that across Twitter, LinkedIn and our website. I think best places to sort of catch up on news and things that are going on in Chambers, and also to get lots of information about what we offer as a Chambers to prospective pupils.
Thank you so much, Genevieve. Once again, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you on the show. But for now, wishing you lots of continued success for your career. Over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.